Time for another episode, maybe a rambling. The Iran resumes enriching uranium 20% purity at a Fordo facility. Iran has resumed enriching uranium 20% purity as its most significant breach yet of its 2015 deal with world powers to end nuclear sanctions. The global nuclear watchdog from the process had begun the underground Fordo plant on Monday. Enriched uranium can be used to make reactive fuel ballistic nuclear bombs. Weapon-grade uranium is at 90% purity. The U.S. State Department spokesperson accused Iran of pursuing a campaign of nuclear extortion. Iran, which insists that its nuclear program is peaceful, has rolled back a number of commitments under the deal. It says retailing for U.S. economic sanctions that were reinstated by 2018 by President Donald Trump when he abandoned the accord, also known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, (JCPOA). In a separate development, Iran's Revolutionary Guard said they had seized a South Korean-flagged chemical tanker in the Gulf due to repeated infringement of maritime environmental laws. South Korea's foreign ministry demands immediate release of the Hankook Kim and says South Korean anti-piracy unit stationed in the Strait of Hormuz has been dispatched to the area. How was the move announced? Iranian government spokesperson Ali Rabai told media the process of enriching uranium 20% has started at Fordo. President Hassan Rouhani has ordered the move because he was bound by new law requiring the production and storage of at least 120 kilograms, 265 pounds of 20% enriched uranium annually for peaceful purposes, he said. Iran's parliament passed a law following the assassination in late November of the country's top nuclear scientist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, which Iranian leaders blame on Israel. Later on Monday, the International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed Iran's move in a report to member states. Iran today has begun feeding uranium already enriched up to 4.1% to U-235 into 6 centrifuge cascades at the Fordo Fuel Enrichment Plant, with further enrichment up to 20%, a statement said. How did other countries react? Some experts see the announcement as an attempt to put pressure on Joe Biden, who is due to succeed Mr. Trump as president on January 20th. Mr. Biden has said he would consider rejoining the nuclear deal as long as Iran returns to full compliance and commits to further negotiations. The State Department spokesperson said Iran enriching uranium to 20% at Fordo is a clear attempt to increase its campaign of nuclear extortion, an attempt that will continue to fail. EU spokesperson Peter Stano said Iran's move constituted a considerable departure from Iran's nuclear commitments under JCPOA with serious nuclear non-proliferation implications. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, one of Iran's main opponents in the Middle East, said the Iranian decision could not be explained in any way except as a continued realization of intention to develop a military nuclear program. Israel will not allow Iran to manufacture nuclear weapons, he added. What is enriched uranium? Enriched uranium is produced by feeding uranium hexafluoride gas into centrifuges to separate the most suitable isotope for nuclear fission, called U-235. Low enriched uranium, which typically has a 3 to 5% purity of U-235, can be used to produce fuel for commercial nuclear power plants. Highly enriched uranium has a concentration of 20% or more and is used in research reactors, as you can see from the slide. Under the nuclear deal, Iran was allowed to enrich uranium only up to 3.67% purity. To stockpile no more than 300 kilograms, 660 pounds of the material. To operate no more than 5,060 of its oldest, least efficient centrifuges, and was required to cease enrichment at Fordo altogether. But Iran has taken steps to reduce these commitments since Mr. Trump reinstated U.S. sanctions to compel to negotiate a replacement of an agreement he said was defective at its core. The steps have increased building up the stockpile of low enriched uranium, producing 4 to 5% enriched 4.5% enriched uranium, restarting advanced centrifuges and resuming enrichment activities at Fordo. Iran Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif stressed on Monday that their measures were fully reversible upon full compliance by all parties. Why is 20% purity significant? Experts at the Arms Control Association said last month that 120 kilograms of uranium enriched 20% was about half the amount of uranium that, when enriched to weapons grade 90% or more, was necessary for one bomb. They also wanted the production of highly enriched uranium would pose the more serious near-term proliferation risk. Increasing the concentration of U-235 atoms by removing U-238 means it can be used for nuclear fuel or bombs. How much effort is required to get the weapons-grade uranium? Very little extra effort is needed to get from 20% enriched uranium to bomb material. That's because going from uranium's natural state of 0.7 concentration of U-235 to 20% takes about 90% of the total effort required to get the weapons grade. Before the nuclear deal, Iran has a sufficient amount of 20% enriched uranium and number of centrifuges that its breakout time was estimated to be about 2 or 3 months. The agreement slowed the breakout time to at least a year. Now, why did I bring this up? Seeing this is relatively old news. Well, because of this. Iran nuclear deal. U.S. joins Vienna talks aimed at reviving accord. The United States has joined talks in Vienna aimed at reviving the Iran nuclear deal, which the Trump administration abandoned in 2018. Joe Biden said he wants to return to the landmark accord. But the 6 remaining state parties need to find a way for him to lift the sanctions imposed by his predecessor and for Iran to return to the agreed limits on its nuclear program. Iran said it will not meet the U.S. face-to-face until that happens. Officials from the UK, France, and Germany are acting as intermediaries, shuttling between the 2 hotels in the Australian capital. Diplomats from the 2 other main parties, Russia and China, also attended. Russia's ambassador to international organizations in Vienna, Mikhail Yulanov, said brief preparatory talks held on Tuesday were successful. The 2 expert-level groups on sanctions lifting and nuclear issues given the task of identifying concrete measures to move forward. Mr. Ulyanov added the experts began their work immediately, but warned that the restoration of the deal would not happen quickly. It will take some time. How long? Nobody knows. The most important thing is that practical work towards achieving this goal has started. The Iran nuclear crisis, the basics. World powers do not trust Iran. Some Kurds believe Iran wants the nuclear power because it wants to build a nuclear bomb. It denies this. So a deal was struck. In 2015, Iran and 6 other countries reached a major agreement. Iran will start nuclear work in return for an end to harsh penalties or sanctions hurting its economy. What is the problem now? Iran restarted banning nuclear work after former President Donald Trump pulled out the deal and reimposed sanctions on Iran. Even though the newly Joe Biden wants to rejoin, both sides must make the first move. Both sides say the other must make the first move. U.S. State Department spokesman Ned Price also sounded a note of caution ahead of the talks, telling reporters in Washington on Monday, "We don't anticipate an early or immediate breakthrough as these discussions we fully expect will be difficult." The U.S. Special Envoy for Iran, Robert Malley, said last week was his goal to see whether we could agree on a roadmap back to compliance of both sides. And the U.S. knew it was going to have to lift the sanctions that are inconsistent with the deal that is reached with Iran. When asked about the comment on Tuesday, Iranian government spokesperson Ali Rabi says found the position realistic and promising. "We are confident that we're on the right track, and if America's will, seriousness, and honesty is proven, it could be a good sign for a better future for this agreement." He added. Mr. Abai iterated that Iran was ready to mutually return to all its obligations in the shortest possible time after verifying the fulfillment of obligations by other parties. Before Joe Biden took charge in the White House, discussions on Iran often emphasized the time was of the essence, that only a small window remained before the Iranian president election in June, when the hardliners were expected to do well, but neither side had been making haste. In both Washington and Tehran, the Iran deal is deeply polarizing. In the U.S., skeptics want a much bigger bargain which covers Iran's ballistic missiles and regional ambitions. It is a concern Tehran keeps inching away from the compliance with the 2015 deal. In Iran, views have hardened across the political spectrum that the West can be trusted. Donald Trump's exit from the deal, Europe's inability to rescue it, and Mr. Biden's slow return have toughened its resolve to strike a hard bargain. Its overriding goal is to see sanctions lifted and its oil sales resume. With both sides saying you go first, there is a need for a roadmap, a sequencing of steps where Iran returns to full compliance, and the U.S. lifts the sanctions and direct talks start again. This will take time, but at least the pace is now starting to pick up. The nuclear deal, now known as Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, has been intensive care since Donald Trump pulled the U.S. out of it. He said it is based on a giant fiction that a murderous regime desired only a peaceful nuclear energy program, and reinstating crippling economic sanctions in an attempt to compel Iran to negotiate a replacement. Iran, which insists it does not want nuclear weapons, refused to do so and retaliated by rolling back a number of key commitments under the accord. Since the end of the year, it has accelerated the breaches in an attempt to increase pressure on the U.S. They have included operating advanced centrifuges to enrich uranium, resuming enrichment to 20% concentration of the most fickle U-235 isotope and building a stockpile of that material. The nuclear deal only allows Iran to produce and store limited quantities of it, uranium enriched up to 3.67% concentration, which can be used to produce fuel for commercial nuclear power plants. Uranium that is enriched 90% or more can be used to make nuclear weapons. And this is some cause for concern. But maybe I'm just rambling. Tell me what you think in the comments.